we have the notice?
The Village of Green Island will hold a public hearing on Monday, March 18th, 2024 at 6:20 p.m. at the Green Island Municipal Center, 19 George Street, Green Island, New York. The purpose of the public hearing is to consider local law number 1 of 2024, a local law adding chapter 156 residency occupancy law to the code of the Village of Green Island. All interested parties may appear and be heard, dated March 7th, 2024.
Thank you very much. Maggie, if you want to give an overview?
Sure. So I will just give a brief overview of the proposed local law and certainly entertain any questions thereafter. So this local law is residential occupancy law, which I will refer to as ROPs, just that's the acronym. So the ROPs is meant to ensure that rental dwellings are safe dwellings. So the purpose really this evening, if this local law is passed, that is the intent, to make sure that all rental units are safe and that we have contact information for the property owners of these rental units. Just some highlights that I will go through the local law itself, and I want to reiterate that there's several parts to this, but the first part is residential rental units are to be inspected once every 3 years. That is state law. We've been able to stay in compliance with that through our Section 8 inspections and just general permit inspections. So that is nothing new. What is new is obtaining a ROP upon change in tenancy. So if you have a long-standing tenant, the apartment itself would be rented once every 3 years. However, if you have a tenant that changes, let's say every year, every 6 months, an inspection would be required before that apartment is reoccupied. That is the new portion of this local law. There is a fee associated with it. It is $40. That $40 is for the initial inspection. If we get in there and find that the apartment is in non-compliance, we will come back one other time for no additional fee. If we have to come back a second, third, or however many times thereafter, it would be an additional $25 after the second inspection. In addition to that, just some other highlights. When we're going in to inspect, we're doing a housing inspection in essence. So if we're not looking for things outside of what would be a basic, are there working toilets, sinks, heating units, windows open and closed, fire extinguisher, or smoke detectors and CO detectors, things of that nature, which would not be any different than what we've been doing all along for a Section 8 inspection, because those are housing inspections. There is in the local law spelled out, if we find something not in compliance, we then have an obligation to notify the property owner and give you set amount of time to make corrections. We are going to ask that the landlords display their certificate of occupancy in the public entryway, or not the public entryway, but so if you own a 2-family dwelling, somewhere in the vestibule when you enter that premises. And basically what we're looking for here is, as far as contact information, we have had instances where we cannot get in contact with a property owner, mostly in emergency situations. This would provide us contact information. We would also be able to pull contact information off of the registry. So we're asking all property owners to register their rental units. So if you have 10 rental units, we're just asking for the address of those properties and a contact person for those units. If you yourself as the property owner cannot respond to a situation at the residence within a 30-minute window or something that's reasonable, we ask that you designate someone who can. That is the purpose of that. Let's let's see, some other highlights. Other than that, this certificate, the way it is intended is to both help the landlord and the tenant. And basically, the main objective is to have safe dwelling units, and that's the basis for it. So I don't want to get too much more into the weeds of the law, but I will entertain questions. Anyone have any questions? Sure, Jim. So sorry. We just ask that you state your name and your address for the record.
James Finning, 98 George Street. One of my main concerns is I'm not fundamentally opposed to the law itself. I get the codes thing, and all landlords should aspire to meet the code. That's not really the issue.
Sure.
My bigger concern is timing. Do you plan on hiring another person to handle this task? Because Todd's pretty busy, and depending on what he's got going on, if he's the only one doing this, if we get a vacant apartment and we do what we need to do to get it ready to be re-rented, and we call Todd and he can't get there, my biggest fear is the timing going to cost landlords money on the re-rental.
Sure. So we have the most manpower we have currently than we've ever had. So in addition to Todd, I am a certified code enforcement officer and inspector, and we have 2 other part-timers. Bill Rice just received his certification to do housing inspections, and Chuck Hughes, who is a retired Albany County code official who works with us part-time, he's also. In addition to that, if we really got stuck, we have Gary Nathan, who's our part-time engineer. He could accompany someone on an inspection. So we have, right now, we thought the timing was best for us because we've been kind of toying with this idea for a few years now, but now we feel as though we have the manpower to execute it. But there will be some responsibility on both parties to plan ahead. So if you call and need something within 24 hours, we cannot guarantee that.
But if you know you're going to have a tenant leaving, call a couple weeks ahead of time and say they're moving out on this day, and
Right.
then they can arrange to have somebody there.
Okay.
It's the ones that leave in the middle of the night that you can't give notice for.
Yeah.
Yes. Rachel, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Other municipalities, do they do this also?
Yeah, so our local law mimics very closely to the city of Watervliet. The city of Cohoes, city of Troy also have this enacted. The bigger cities, there's a little more complexity because they're much larger than we are, but yes, we've had instances probably within the last year where people are calling us for the certificates because that's what they're used to.
Okay.
And when we will say we'll do it upon request, but right now it's not required, going forward, then certainly we would change our answer to that.
Thank you.
And this will be beneficial to the landlords too, because when the initial inspection is done, everything has to be in place. So if you have a tenant leave and they've done a lot of damage and you have to get it re-inspected, the person who inspected is going to say, this never would have been approved. So you know that person who's leaving did the damage.
And I will say one of the major issues that we're having is over occupancy. We're finding that people are multiple families are registering children for school out of the same dwelling unit. We are arriving to service calls, whether that be EMS or fire, police, building complaints, whatever the case may be, and there's numerous amount of people in there, and again, it's not safe. So it all goes back to the safety of the tenant, the safety of the property. But over occupancy is a big issue that we are dealing with currently, and we do, on the certificate itself, will list the number of applicants and who the the family name of which the lease is entered into with. So we will have that documented, and that helps code remove these people, because right now we have very limited ways to get them out.
Mag, on the placard that goes there, can they put an alternate person if you can't reach whoever the owner is?
Yes,
You can put
absolutely.
a second one,
Mhm.
somebody might be on vacation or something like that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that's really to reach off hours. We have, certainly we use GIPA's system a lot for contact information. I have assessment records for information, but sometimes those aren't the best contacts. And we have a lot more landlords that don't either live in state or live in the country, and those are very problematic for us. Justin, did you have any? Go ahead.
Yeah. Justin Finning, 98 Hudson Ave. So I have generally 4 questions.
Sure.
I can ask them one at a time if you want.
Okay.
All right, so for items that are currently grandfathered, is this situation gonna change any of that?
No, it will not.
Okay. All right, you said for it's 3 years and anytime you have a turnover?
Once every 3 years, or if there's turnover, yes.
So would that mean if, like, I'll give you an example.
Sure.
The apartment over my father's office,
Mhm.
that is a weird layout, have a high turnover just because, you know, people kind of get tired of trying
Sure.
to deal with the weird layout. For that apartment, I would say we average a turnover every year. So we would have to be re-inspected every single year?
That's correct. But if you had the same tenant stay, start April 1st of 2024, you wouldn't be re-inspected again until 2027.
Okay. And if a tenant stayed longer than 3 years, they would have to be re-inspected every 3 years?
Correct.
Okay. So could that, I guess my real concern is that we're just kind of throwing money away if it's being re-inspected every year and nothing's changing. Like generally the tenants that live there for less than a year leave it in good shape. We go, like I do our inspections for Finning Properties, and generally I don't notice major things have changed when tenancies are that short. Is there room in this to rewrite that so that it could be 3 years or on a turnover?
The once every 3 years, unfortunately, is state law. So the change in tenancy really gives us more of a handle on the occupancy levels and the general, as you know, we've been on plenty of inspections together. Smoke detectors is the biggest one, right?
Yeah, sure.
So just making sure those things are in place. I understand that there is a value and there is money to the inspection itself, but in the long run, I think it's, again, it's just my personal opinion, worth only for the protections that it will provide you.
We've also had instances with somebody leaves and they've been hoarders and there's all kinds of stuff going on, unsanitary things and things like that. So they might have only been there 6 months, but they could have done a lot of stuff in that amount of time. So, like I said, it protects the landlord also.
Okay. You mentioned that it's a housing inspection, which sounds to me broader than just a safety inspection. Now I understand, you mentioned windows not opening and closing. I can see that being a fire thing, exposed wiring, things that are true safety items that would potentially harm somebody or prevent somebody from living, not having heat, not having water, those kind of things. Does the scope of this go beyond safety?
No, so I guess it's your interpretation of the definition, but we're exactly looking for things that you just stated, making sure there's 2 means of egress. Many times we've gone into apartments and they have the back door blocked with boxes or debris or whatever, mattresses. It's basically looking at surface level, the apartment from a surface level. We are not going to say, oh, did you get a permit for this and check your plumbing? We just want to make sure that the water is running, type of thing.
Because the reason I ask is because now when you and Ted were running Section 8, I think it was a little simpler, I would say. Like the inspections were not so comprehensive. I don't want to say that as if it's
Sure.
a bad thing to you guys, but since Mastriani has taken over, they're adding things into it that I think my gut is to say that the tenants are just asking for it. It's not actually safety items. Like as an example, I had Mastriani tell me that I had to paint an apartment because the tenant's been smoking in there for like 7 years. And so I called them and I said to them, why do I have to paint the apartment? Like that's not a safety item. And they didn't really have an answer, and I fought them on it, and I said, I'm not painting the apartment. She has turned it brown with her smoke. Like, that's not fair to me. So, you know, I want to make sure that this doesn't become like I guess you could say like a slippery slope, where
Sure.
things get put into it that are not actually like code and safety items.
Sure. So after, I mean, I would be very interested in your feedback on Mastriani's inspections, just because that is, well, we're going into our second, almost third year with that, but we haven't really received much feedback on those inspections, so I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Okay.
But I think you're gonna see what we're providing for these ROPs is an inspection very similar to what Ted and I used to do.
Okay. All right.
And that's
fair.
what
Yeah,
my intent, that's how I foresee it going.
I'm not against the inspections like my father
Mhm.
said. As long as it doesn't become a slippery slope and it sticks with safety,
Mhm.
I'm all about that. That's fine. I think that's good for the village.
Sure.
Okay, and the last one, sorry, I know I'm.
No, it's
No,
okay.
in and out
you're
here,
fine.
whatever.
That's what it's for.
What is the process if you disagree and you, say I have a dispute with the tenant broke something and it's a safety thing, and I go to fix it, and for whatever reason, like we can't within a reasonable time, what is the process to either extend or appeal?
So I think we would handle that through timing of, do you mean who's responsible for fixing it?
No,
Or just the timing to get it fixed?
I guess I'm saying if we disagree with something, that is
Sure.
a hit, what is the process then?
Well, I think, I will go back and look for a definitive answer for that for you, but I think it would be just a back and forth with our code officials to make sure, you know, as far as we would have to provide you with an explanation and point to where in the code it states, we can't just willy-nilly say you have to fix X, Y, or Z.
Right.
We would have to then show to you or prove to you in the code where, you know, it states that you have to fix this to be in compliance. But I think you'll get from our staff in the code department, building department right now, we're just looking for mutual cooperation. And like I said, it goes beyond the actual apartment itself. It's the bigger issues that we're trying to get a handle on.
Okay. All right. So
And like-
just essentially just discussion with
Sure.
okay.
If you read what the guidelines are on it too, it tells what the landlord's responsibility and what the tenant's responsibility is. And one of the examples that's in there is if an apartment has a rodent problem of some kind, but it's just that apartment, they've created the situation, they have to rectify
Then it would be on the tenant to rectify.
If the entire building is running rife with something, then it's the landlord's responsibility. But it clearly states in there the responsibilities of the tenants.
Okay. Where is this available?
So we have created a guide for ROPs, and it will be online by the end of this week. We've been tweaking it, and we didn't want to put it out pending tonight's approval. But we have created, it's probably like a 10-page document that will guide you through exactly what we're going to be looking for, who's responsible, who we believe should be responsible for what, and what actions would take and steps to be taken. So it really is a very in-depth overlook of the program and what you can expect to get from us on these inspections. But we will have that posted on the website where the local law is no later than the end of this week.
Okay. All right. Invasive was the word I was looking for.
Okay.
Not comprehensive. Thank you.
Yes, Joe.
Hey, just a quick question. I'm looking at it right now. I see where it says rented dwelling unit, so it looks like mostly residential. Do we have something along the same line as far as commercial?
So this would be all rental units. So this does include apartment buildings, whether it's River's Edge, Starbuck Island,
But it's
Corner-
dwelling, so I'm
But
saying,
it's
is there
dwellings.
something along, do we have the same thing along the
Oh,
same?
fire, like, we have like, there's a commercial fire inspection requirement. So we have to inspect all of our commercial buildings for fire and safety on an annual basis.
On an annual
Yes.
basis? All right. I just realized it was just residential.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think Jim had one.
Yes, oh, sorry. Mr. Tracy?
When will this new law go into effect? And when will you start your inspections? And how do you form your list to go on down to start? I mean, do you start on Upper Hudson Avenue and work house by house by house, or?
Sure, so what we have done, we've been working on this for quite some time. So what we have done is take our assessment database, and we think we have a good handle on all of the rental units in the village. So we've created, for lack of better words, a spreadsheet. And what we will do is we will most likely start with change of occupancy inspections. And then what we will do for the once every 3-year inspections is we're gonna take the Village of Green Island and break it up into neighborhoods. So you may not even get an inspection if your tenant hasn't changed until next year or the year after. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. We have thousands of rental units. So we are not gonna start April 1st inspecting everyone's apartment. So we will have to block it out in segments. So neighborhood 1 could be Cohoes Ave, West Street, High Street. And then, you know, that could take us 6 months. And then the next 6 months would be James Street, Payne Street, and half of George Street. So it's the once every 3 years is going to take 3 years probably for us to get through all those apartments. We will start with the ones changing tenancy. And we're hoping to work with the Green Island Power Authority. When people come in to sign up for electric, they'll be required to show their ROP. We're also going to be working with the school district. You won't be able to register your child for school unless you have your ROP. Until people get into the practice of actually calling and getting the inspection, because we have a handful of landlords here too, but there's a lot of landlords out there that probably have not seen this or, you know, looked into it or think we're serious about it. So it's a huge, there's thousands of rental units at this point. I should have looked at the number before I came, but I didn't. But it will take us 3 years just to get through them the first time. And then thereafter, hopefully, we will be able to work out the kinks and move it along a little bit faster.
Well, probably this is all gonna be brand new news for most tenants. Will you be using the monthly letter that comes with the electric bill?
It's in this month.
It's in this month's newsletter
Oh, it
in
is, okay.
anticipation of after tonight. So we will start there. We will continue to notice it. We have the option of doing, you know, with the newsletter, with the water billing, with social media. We will, you know, we will continue to push this out. Hopefully the school district has an extensive listserv. They will help us push this out. But there is going to be some, you know, hiccups, and we know that. It's not gonna be perfect at first, but we are committed to making this happen. Jim, I'm sorry.
No, actually, that was my question. This is a huge undertaking, and how are you gonna implement it?
Yes. And we have the regular building permits to do on a daily basis. So we'll have, you know, certain people on certain days, and, you know, the inspections, you know, over time will get quicker, and, you know, we're gonna stay hopeful.
But there are penalties in this law
Yeah.
if people do not tell when there's a tenant changing or they don't get an inspection or what, there are penalties. So,
Yes, Bob?
Is there a fee for the 3-year inspection?
Yes, that's $40 as well.
Also.
Mhm.
What is the penalty?
I think it starts at $250 a day and goes up from there.
A day, what, after they've occupied the apartment?
1 second.
Page 4.
Yeah, so it's $250, and it goes up in there. I don't believe it specifies that it's per day they occupy. It's just a general blanket fine. And again, in the beginning, we're willing to work with people. It's after we've gotten this off the road and people are just being, you know, negligent is gonna be the issue.
Last page, 7B.
Thank you.
it's a
250
day.
per-
Yeah, or up to 5 days.
Each day that the violation continues shall be deemed a separate offense.
It's offense.
So it does go by the day.
So it is $250 per day?
Yep. And you can go to jail too. Seriously. Although some days you think you could use the rest, right?
And that would be, and the days would start after the next tenant occupied the apartment without an inspection?
It would probably be whenever you discover it.
You're right. Or maybe from,
It's just, like, I have 10.
our biggest help will be when they sign up for electric, unless the landlord holds the electric bill in their name, that will be our biggest avenue to get people to sign up.
Any more questions? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you very much. Now we're going to have our regular board meeting. I'll call to order the monthly meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Green Island. Michelle, can we have the roll call?
Mayor McNulty Ryan.
Present.
Executive Assistant Maggie Alec.
Can we stop the talking in here, please? We've got Teresa.
Present.
Teresa, we got a meeting going on.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Trustee Files.
Present.
Trustee Jones.
Present.
Trustee McGivern.
Present.
Trustee Lyota.
Present.
Trustee Cartwheel. Absent. Attorney Legnar.
Can we have a motion to excuse the absentee?
I'll
He
make
got
the
called
motion.
to another board meeting, so.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Do we have anything for
I
that?
don't think so. Oh.
Nothing for public forum. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our regular meeting on February 20th. Everyone has a copy. Are there any corrections?
No.
If not, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Do we have any communications? No. Next on the agenda is appointments. I think all of you know that we've been looking to appoint a new chief for our fire department, and E.J. Cini is the one that we'd like to propose for this. We're having a civil service issue, which we're there, but it may take another couple of days. I don't want to wait another month if this approval comes through this week. So what I would like to ask is that we appoint E.J. contingent upon the approval of civil service, and then he could start right away after we do that. He's an amazing guy. He's really worked hard at this, and you know, he's been doing some things with the fellas in the firehouse, and they had a training down here for a couple of weeks, and the guys really like him. So I'm very happy over it. He's very good.
He's got a lot of good ideas.
And every place I go, other fire departments, they all talk about what a good catch this is. The only downside to it is he's a hell of a police officer too. And I hate to lose him there, and he may still fill in once in a while on something like that, but I think this is gonna be great. He's got, do you have 30-some years in Albany?
27 years in the city of Albany, and he retired as deputy chief there.
So I'm thrilled over this. Does the board have any questions? If
Yes,
not-
and I think he's a great choice. He's got a lot of good ideas.
Yeah.
I was talking to him about some of the things that he wants to do, and he talked about some of them here last week during that training. And
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be good, and all the guys are on board with it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So, if there are no other questions or concerns, could I have a motion to appoint E.J. Cini as the fire chief in the village of Green Island contingent upon approval by civil service?
I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is the approval of claims. Everyone has a copy. Does anyone have any questions? Sheila's here to answer if you do. I got all mine answered earlier, so. If not, could I have a motion to pay the bills?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is the submittal of the monthly report by the treasurer. Everyone has a copy. Are there any questions? If not, could I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of the police activity report for February 2024. Everyone has a copy. Could I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
Get them both?
Got 'em.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of the fire department report for February of 2024. Everyone has a copy. Could I have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of the monthly report of the Parking Violations Bureau. Everyone has a copy. Could I have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of adjustments to the water and sewer bills. I think they're all routine.
All routine.
Could I have a motion to make the adjustments?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of setting a date for a public hearing for fiscal year 24-25, a budget hearing. I would like to propose that we do that on Monday, April 15th at 5:30, right here, before our other meetings. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Could I have a motion to make that date?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of setting a date for a public hearing, local law number 2, to possibly override the tax levy limit. We don't know if we're gonna have to do that yet, but we'd rather set the date and have it set in case we do. The proposed date would be Monday, April 15th at 6:20. It would be right before our village board meeting. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of adopting local law number 1 for 2024, adding chapter 156 residency occupancy law. I don't think you need to make any more
I don't think
comments
so,
unless
yeah.
anybody on the board has any more questions.
No.
If not, could I have a motion to pass local law number 1?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the implementation and funding in the first instance 100% of the federal aid and state Marchicelli program aid. You want to
Sure.
give some comments?
So basically, this is just an agreement with New York State DOT to be able to get reimbursed for the additional funding for construction of Cohoes Avenue.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do you second?
Second, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Next is consideration of the monthly recap submitted by Gitman DPW crew. Like I said at our other meeting, the boys have been busy. They're busy all the time and they're doing a lot of stuff. I actually had gone into all of the parks and we were starting to get that nice weather. And I had a lady stop me in front of my house and just tell me that the parks look pristine.
Yeah,
Okay.
they look
So
nice, yeah.
I gotta pass that along to them, so, could I have a motion to, accept their monthly recap?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Just for our board forum, we're gonna have a budget workshop for the trustees on April 1st at 5 p.m. here at the Municipal Center. So you'll have the proposed budget before then and everybody can come with their questions. And the budget hearing will be held on Monday, April 15th at 5:30 here. Does the board have anything to talk about? Okay.
Good.
Could I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Thank you, everyone.
You know,